Welcome to the Opera Voice and Bodywork podcast, where we dive into everything an opera singer needs to succeed. From mastering technique to acing auditions, Peter, Mark, and Karen Fanta's insightful conversations will help you connect your voice and your body. Tune in for professional advice and a fresh perspective on how to thrive as a professional singer.
It doesn't matter if one note is wrong or you made a wrong entrance. It's not great, and certainly an auditioner will know. But I think it's important to show a certain level of confidence because you need that to perform. You cannot second guess the auditioners. The singers that come in and try to figure out what would please the auditioner are focused on the wrong thing.
Okay, Peter, as the head of Virginia Opera for 36 years, you cast hundreds of singers for each seasons through the audition process.
Right.
Was important to you when listening to singers' auditions?
What was important for me was to just watch and listen to the person that was auditioning. And I had a series of check-off things on my form, which I can tell you about, which forced me to make a comment about various things, like the appearance of the person, their musicality, their technique, their acting, and then whether I thought they would be possible to hire or not possible to hire, and if I should hire them immediately, which role. So those are the things that I was forced myself to look at. But essentially, I needed to understand if the singer in front of me had enough technique to present the character. Because unless they had their technique together, they couldn't. The most important thing, and the thing that I put first, was the quality of the voice and what kind of voice it was. Because, of course, you need a special voice for singing opera. You need to project over an orchestra into a hall. And that's different from singing with a mic or singing more popular repertoire, which doesn't have the range. So those are the things that were important to me.
So when you started essentially to where you ended was about 50 seconds. If you're planning on editing these things, because it got to, are you planning to edit if you need to?
How much was the tape?
Well, I forgot to turn my timer on.
If it's
But I was listening for places where you could come in. I mean, you speak very clearly and very, but it's essentially.
I was thinking to add into that question.
Yeah.
So it's no problem. We're gonna edit this out.
In the future, I'll time them in future.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I was going to ask you, Peter, is there something that you feel singers were too worried about that is really not that important?
I think people worry about what they are wearing. and I really believe that if you're overdressed for the occasion, it doesn't make sense. It's not a concert, it's an audition, and that sort of tells you a little bit something about the person. However, if you know that you're going after a particular character because that role is what the company is hiring for, I would definitely have something about your dress, the way that you're dressed, allow you to present yourself in that role. Not that it's a costume, but that in more casual way, you are allowing the auditioner to see you in that role. I think that makes sense. But I do think people worry about how they dress.
And I was going to ask you, like, for example, if I go into an audition and I'm having a bad day, can you notice that, for example, I was recently sick or something, and maybe I didn't get the high note, but would you be able to see beyond that? Or
Yes, I think I'd be able to see the quality of the voice, the quality of the musicianship. If you're not in top form, do not worry about that because you've decided to go ahead with the audition. Just do the best you can. And, I think you'll present yourself in the best way that you can. It doesn't matter if one note is wrong or you made a wrong entrance. It's not great. And certainly an auditioner will know. But I think it's important to show a certain level of confidence because you need that to perform. And so I think that's a very important thing that someone in a company is considering when they're in an audition and trying to consider you for performing a particular role. When I'm really, really interested in a person, I actually start to work with them in the audition by asking some questions and giving them a little bit of advice that might help them across a difficult corner. But what I'm really doing is seeing if they're open to working. Because what I know is that in the early days of Virginia Opera, we didn't have a lot of money, so we couldn't pay singers who were known for the roles. For instance, my first Violetta was Diana Soviero, but nobody, she had never done Violetta in Italian before. She had just done it in English for the Guldovsky tour throughout the U.S. And she was a sensational Violetta, and of course she auditioned in Italian. But when I hired her right out of the audition, she had dressed wonderfully. I still remember her taking her hat off and all the hair bobbling down. And she was dressed in a way that was appropriate for Violetta and let me see that she could be the belle of the ball at that party, both at her own house and at Flora's. So it was exciting because she was totally on top of the role. She had performed it hundreds of times in English, but I was hearing her in Italian, and of course she is Italian. So that was perfect, and she understood the language. And so it was a very easy transition for her, and it was a knockout audition, and I hired her on the spot.
okay.
Peter, just as an aside, I don't think you were at this master class, but Naikari had been very sick and really didn't want to do this audition. And she said, I'm just
Yeah,
going to
I
do
was
it.
there.
Oh, you
Or I
were there.
listened.
Am I
I
acting?
listened to it. Mhm.
Okay, so you know. So that's a very good example.
I think you cannot second guess the auditioners. The singers that come in and try to figure out what would please the auditioner are focused on the wrong thing. They need to present themselves as though they were performing the role with the security, with the concept that they have that may not be what the auditioner has of the role, but it is the only concept that's going to have them perform their true selves. And the auditioner can certainly see, oh my God, that's a wonderful interpretation. Perhaps our director, or if that person is a director, will want a different interpretation, but at least they can see that you would be convincing in your interpretation of it. So it's very important to tune out all the self-doubt, tune out all the questions about, I wonder if they like me, I wonder if they like the way I look, I wonder if I'm what they're looking for. It's not appropriate to have those thoughts in an audition. It's only self-defeating to do that. So I would say do all the preparation before, but when you come to the audition, show your commitment to yourself as well as the music and the role. That's
You know,
the key thing that
sorry.
reads.
This is something a lot of singers wonder. Like we go into auditions, we're very nervous. We, as you said, there are people who focus on the wrong thing. Like there are people who worry too much about what they look like, or their bodies, or what their voice is sounding like that day. Like, we focus on the wrong thing, and I guess it shows a lot to whoever is doing the casting. I was actually going to ask you, Peter, how do you feel about people moving around a little bit? Because I feel like
That's a very good question. That's a great question because on stage, you do move and you interact with other characters and the scenery. But in an audition, what is appropriate? Well, it's just you and a piano. It seems to me that it depends on the aria. Sometimes, like Visidarte, uh, you could really just use the piano as an anchor to begin, and you don't need to move very much. What needs to move is your emotion. So stabilizing on the piano will perhaps give you that extra strength and balance that will enable you to go into yourself and express the emotion big, so that by the time you get to the B flat on top, you're not worn out running around, and you're not weightless in the sense that you've been trying to find stage right, stage left, and substituting motion for emotion. Seems to me there are a lot of arias that focus on a particular internal emotion. In other words, Scarpia is on stage, but she's not singing to or for Scarpia. Tosca is singing about her own emotions. What could be more appropriate for an audition? On the other hand, Rosina aria. Rosina is a very clever young girl, and she really wants to show that. And so it might be very useful for her not only to move her eyes and her face, but also to move at some parts. And use the auditioners as someone you're talking to, trying to convince, I'm smart, I'm sly, and I'm not telling all my secrets. So you forming a relationship really with the auditioner, because the aria forms that same relationship with the audience. And I think that's an important point. I don't think it's good to make a motion like walking to stage right or stage left just for the purpose of moving. It's got to be motivated. But depending on the aria, you can move all over the place without being untrue to the character. And that's what counts. I think auditioners are, on the whole, smart about that. They pick up immediately when you're doing a motion that is not connected to your body. In other words, when your mind tells you, well, maybe you should move, to show that you can move on stage. That's not going to look authentic. But if you have an idea and you want to tell someone over here that idea, moving there is going to be very, very motivated in the right way.
I have a question. Do a lot of singers think of the people they're auditioning for as the enemy? I'm just curious how an auditioner holds the idea of because when you said you sing to them like they're, getting like they're a real audience, do singers often think of the people they're auditioning for as just kind of a wall?
I think mainly when you come into an audition as a singer, you may know one of the people, if there are a lot, or you may know none of them. And if you know none of them and start worrying about that, it shows.
Ah.
If you know one of them, it's all right to make eye contact with them and acknowledge that. It would be foolish not to. But don't dwell on it. Don't think, oh, I didn't sing so well for that one before. Just think, oh, I know this person. I'm going to show them what I'm going to do. In other words, you've got to put yourself in a positive, strong position in order for you to have the confidence to show yourself. Yeah, your voice is one part of you, but your musicianship, your confidence, your power of transferring a character, really creating a character and bringing a character alive, that's much more important. And it takes energy and it takes thought. It takes preparation. Hopefully, the preparation is done before the audition.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is like, what should the preparation be? Like, how far ahead do you start getting yourself in the mind of,
Well, if you know that they're looking for a Count de Luna, and that's in your repertoire, I would certainly spend a lot of the time, and your manager tells you that. Or the manager says, I want you to audition for this company because they have this role open and that role open. Definitely bring those arias up to 150% of what you can do. Focus on it before so that it's natural in the audition for you to be singing those arias. You don't want, if they're looking for a Count de Luna, for you to be singing Harlequin because it's just totally the opposite character. And especially if you feel Harlequin is great for you and you want to start with that, that might be okay, but you have to realize they're next going to ask for something that's more relevant to what they're looking for. Harlequin is short, so you can get away with that. But you run the danger of them having listened to Harlequin and decided, since you sang it beautifully, that they didn't hear the Count de Luna in your voice and they are not going to ask for another number.
exactly?
So if you're after the Count de Luna, I would start with something with the Count de Luna specifically, or something that helps you warm up for the Count de Luna, so that they hear that in your voice and then ask for it. But you may want some preparatory work before. You take a risk because they still may not hear it. So those are the issues, I think, from the point of view of the singer. I think if you're too focused on the auditioners, it reads a level, it makes the auditioners a little bit uncomfortable because it tells them that you're trying to please them rather than showing what you can do. And that's logical. You can understand that. So it's really better for you to take the opportunity to show them what you can do in the best way, what you know are your strong points, and to go after and have a real clear concept of the characters that they're looking for, so that you can have researched them before and gotten the best coaching you can on them. But don't worry about it once you're on the stage there or on the in the audition studio. Just go for broke.
Okay. So, for example, you have two singers that have really similar strengths, and they're perfect for the role. How do you decide between those singers?
That's a very good question because a lot of times people who have auditioned and not gotten the role feel downcast because they didn't like me, type of thing. But you don't understand it from the auditioner's point of view. You are a wonderful Rosina, but you're 5'10", and my Almaviva is 5'4". And so I'm going to hire the shorter one of you, all other things being equal. It's not a reflection on you. And you've got to stop being sensitive that way. That would be as auditions are like, before you learn to cook for yourself, you have to eat other people's cooking. So while you're auditioning, enjoy the meal because you can't just worry about it.
And it's
And
practice.
eventually you get to cook what you like. And you're beyond auditions. But most singers really spend the early part of their careers auditioning all the time. Not everyone's going to hire you, but the reason is not because you're not good enough. It's because something about your appearance is not or your voice. Your voice may be stronger than the singers you need to sing with. And a good artistic director would cast properly that way. And yet you may be a much better singer than the one he hired. Do not worry about that. You have to eat 3 meals a day, just like you have to audition all the time. Keep up your strength and your good feeling about yourself.
The more you audition, the more you practice auditioning also, I would think.
That is a very good point. And of course, a lot of sessions are spent with your teacher and with other people taking lessons about how to audition. And they'll tell you how to dress, how to act, and this and that. I think it may be very helpful, but in an audition, you're trying to present yourself. Why would you go to someone else to find out who yourself is?
Definitely.
The best thing that I can tell you, and I work with singers, I loved it in Virginia Opera, a 3 or 4 week rehearsal period. When I chose a singer who didn't have that much on their resume, that's another thing I'd like to speak about. I would hire them if I was sure that I could, in that period of time, 3 weeks, bring them from what they showed on the nature of their talent, their sensitivity, and their musicianship, and their responsiveness to working with me, which I test in the audition. I could tell they're going to deliver magnificent performances that are light years ahead of what I'm hearing today. And I would hire them because I want to give them the opportunity. I believe that the quality of their voice is excellent. I know that I can help them during the period of the rehearsals, and I'm the one that's going to conduct them. And so I will know that I can work within what they're showing and show their best points because they're in the direction that I want for that particular role. So that's what's important for me.
That also explains why anybody who comes to your master class, you know what you're listening to. And they can have confidence in that. That to me is a huge statement.
And I grew up singing for 3 seasons at the Metropolitan Opera, the old Met, as a young soprano, boy soprano. I was in the children's choruses. Had solo roles as they were. And I stayed to the end of every performance. I was stunned by the quality of these international voices, American, Russian, Italian, French. They were sensational every night. And I would watch from the wings and watch how did they produce that huge, rich sound. And I learned as a child so many things that I wasn't adult enough to articulate to myself. It wasn't until I ran my own opera company that I could articulate them because I knew instinctively. And so when I hear a voice, I can hear the potential, but I can also hear whatever the slight obstructions are. Maybe one baritone is not really covering soon enough to get to their D's and E's and F's. And I know I can help them with that because the rest of their range is gorgeous. And, an occasional note breaks through properly. So I'm amazed because when I first got into the field, of course, I had all of this background. I had played principal viola for the Chicago Lyric Opera. I had sung at the Met years before for 3 years until my voice changed. And when I got to the Virginia Opera, and I'm there at Opera America or wherever, auditioning with all these other people in the field, they were all looking at the background, the buyers, while I'm looking at the singer. And I'm thinking, don't they have ears and eyes? And I was amazed that they wouldn't hire anyone without feeling the confidence that they had done the role before And that may be appropriate on the highest level with opera companies. But, you know, early in the Virginia Opera, we brought Danny Newman, the guru of subscriptions from the Chicago Lyric Opera, and he had managed to run the subscription level up towards 99% at Lyric Opera. And the way that or to fill the houses like 103% at some performances. And the way he did it was he built a subscription over years, and then he convinced his subscribers when they weren't going to use the tickets to return them to the development department, and then they resold them. So he was really able to show over 100%
Wow.
of capacity at various things. So early, that first production I did for Virginia Opera, Diana Soviero was coming, or I was told by Danny Newman, I brought him in to speak to the people. He said he would advise us, since we were starting a subscription season right after the Traviata, for us to bring in someone like Beverly Sills. And I said, well, she won't come down here for 3 weeks. I couldn't afford her to come for 2 or 3 performances. She'd come for the dress rehearsal, maybe, with her own costumes for the role, do her own shtick, because she wouldn't have been there to develop this. I said, that's instant opera. That's not the kind of opera that I believe in, where you develop the character relationships and you take it seriously and you work with the conductor and the other singers and the director and the lighting designer. And that integration is so much more powerful. And I said, I have a different idea. I said, we can hire someone like Diana Soviero, who was sensational. This was right after we did that particular Traviata, and create a star. She had subsequently went to La Scala and the Met singing the same role. That was thrilling for our audiences. And if I had hired Beverly Sills, we would have sold out the tickets. But in the opera audience we were developing, a lot of people in that audience had never heard opera before, and they might not have understood who Beverly Sills was. But they sure knew who Diana Soviero was after that Traviata. And when I brought her back to do other roles, boy, did they buy the tickets.
One thing you at the very beginning when we were talking about doing this like years ago, one thing you said was because of your experience at the Met, you knew what there was a sound, and you just more recently hadn't been hearing that sound. So my sense was you wanted to do this, what we're doing, to allow people to get people to have that sound again. Wasn't that part of it?
That's a very important point.
Yeah.
What was wonderful about the singers I heard in the mid-50s, we're talking about 1953, 54, 55, 56, every night it was Eleanor Stieber, Richard Tucker, Leonard Warren, Mario Del Monaco, Zinka Milanov, Lisa Della Casa. I mean, these were unique instruments that were so personal. As soon as you heard one note, you knew who it was.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't generic good singing. It was these people freed their sound with their teachers and grew into an unobstructed flow of beautiful sound that was unique to them. Every one of the voices I mentioned was different and different from others in their range. And you could tell their timbre immediately. What happened since that time is that people started traveling much more. And jet planes, recordings came out, and people tried to imitate the unique sounds of other singers, rather than digging deep into themselves to remove all of the obstructions, because you basically have your body. Your voice is in your body. It's got to be positioned in your body and supported in your body so that it can be free and flexible. And of course, that's exactly what Karen does and what we love doing together. Because when we work with a singer, Karen watches very astutely and I listen. And I can always hear there's some little obstruction here that's preventing a free sound, or a little stiffness in traveling in the high notes. They're not really supporting enough, or they're dropping the sounds into their mouth and they're being swallowed up by the tongue and don't know how to position their lower range. I mean, this is the same pitch as this, but this is where singers go for a long, some singers who haven't understood that their lower range is a weaker vibration that's going slowly. And if you don't support that into a higher position behind the nose here, then you won't have any resonance because the mouth is drowned by the tongue. Any resonance you put in your mouth, if it isn't directly on to the bottom, the roof of the mouth, which is the bottom of your palate, it will be drowned by 2/3 of that space is a wet tongue. People do not understand that the nasal folds are a much bigger and more reliable resonance for your tone. And that as long as you can start getting into these resonances at the beginning of the sound with a relaxed throat, then you can hook up and really align your sound into your body, which is the work that Karen and I have now really done together for 4 or 5 years. It is a much more clear way of understanding that your voice is in your body and your body needs to know how to support it so that it can move freely. If you're thinking that your voice is from your neck to here, you're trying to make sound and you're coming off your body to do it. And therefore it cannot be smoothly going from a lower position to a higher position, basically from front to back, and in a high position here, rather than thinking of low is there and high is there. That's not the way we sing. And some people have that, naturally have the gift. Someone like Pavarotti must have had that instinct naturally. And I really wonder if he is, because it's so natural, he may not be the best person to communicate it to somebody who doesn't have it naturally.
Yeah.
I think that what Karen believes in is she has studied all of these disciplines: Alexander technique, MELT, MELT, Pilates, cyclotron, all
There's
of
no
these.
such, Peter, stop. There's no such thing as cyclotron. And I
What
have
am I thinking of? Yeah,
I don't know, but we'll talk about this later. We've got to get our message more.
right. Well, the point is,
That's okay.
yeah, I'm not sure where I was going on this, but
I'm sorry.
with all of these different disciplines that Karen got accredited with and is accredited to teach, she doesn't teach it in large classes because she doesn't believe in that. She doesn't believe in one size fits all. Yes, I can tell you what exercises are best for you to warm up, but it's how you do them that's the most important.
Exactly.
And that depends on how, if we can explain the principles and guide you through it. You have a unique instrument and resonance chamber up there. It's defined by your bone structure, your muscles, etc., and your whole body. The way you align your body, depending on your age, has taken that many years to develop. And perhaps you've had a couple of accidents and you've compensated and are not using all of the muscles in a free way that you need to, and you're not even aware of it. But Karen is aware of it and is aware of what you can do
Watch out.
with a slight adjustment that will fix the problem. And she said she brings that up at exactly the moment I am asking for you to execute something vocally that you're having a little bit of difficulty getting totally 100% free. And we're talking about between 95 and 98%. It's a minor adjustment. And the more you understand how to make that adjustment, you can continue to make it to 99% and 100, and that's no longer a problem. If you understand the principle and we guide you to how to apply it to your particular way that you use your body, as
Mhm.
well as the way you habitually use your voice. These minor adjustments can make the difference between a good singer and a major career.
Peter, I just want to say one thing I know that we've discovered is if you have vocal coaching and then you go and you take a yoga or applies whatever, it is not the same as having the two coaches in the same room at the same time. And we have seen this over anyone we've ever coached, that doing my little adjustments in the coaching with Peter, it's night and day, and they progress so much faster. It's just fascinating. The other thing I wanted to say, Peter, is that we were talking about how you absorbed the sound of the great singers in the 50s. And then you said, and it started to shift as people flew, this and that, and they were more likely to imitate or copy other singers. But what was important is these people from the 50s, you could hear one note and know who it was. And right. I never really thought about that in connection to what we do, which is stress that you are unique, you sing like no one else. And that's really our goal, is for everybody to really be able to express who they are through their music, which I think would make them far more marketable because they're a unique commodity. And I never kind of put those together before.
I think it's exactly the essence of every great singer has a unique sound.
Yeah.
But if you look more, and it's true of every athlete and every dancer,
Yeah.
you know, again, once you are free of obstacles with
Yeah.
your body is the virtuosic instrument that can lead you to express what's
Yeah.
in your mind and in your thoughts. Technique has no value apart from musical expression.
That is so important.
Right. It's not technique for its own sake. It's
No.
for the creation of character and the release of what you feel about the music. Every singer spends so much time and energy developing their voice, and sometimes they lose sight of that the reason to work on technique separate from the repertoire sometimes is so that you don't have the musical problem. Bring music to your exercises, and then you'll be able to bring that technique to your music and to your repertoire.
Based on your experience, what is the number one thing that you would advise singers whenever they are going to take an audition?
Be prepared and believe in yourself. Those two things are mutually locked together. You can't be confident if you're not prepared. You need to work out the problems in exercises. You can make a little exercise of a phrase that's a problem with you. Frequently, I will ask in a master class, bring me a phrase from the arias that you audition that you don't really feel 100% in control of the way you'd like to. And let's just see how we can make this much easier so that you feel you have control over that phrase. And it's not a question mark anymore. I think it's very important for you to be able to feel prepared and secure in an audition and to realize you are presenting yourself. You are presenting yourself in a variety of roles that have been written for other people. Don't try to imitate those other people. Show them your feelings about that role.
Okay, I love that. I was going to say before that I've had several coachings with a pianist recently, and I recorded them. And when I heard them, I was just amazed of the changes that have been happening because we have just been working for 2 months, I think.
Mhm.
And also that I feel that my voice sounds more like me. Every time I hear it, it sounds more like myself. So
It
I love
can't
that.
it can't be moving to the audience unless it's genuine and authentic. You've just articulated what every auditioner wants to hear.
You know, if you had heard, you weren't there this last Sunday, right? Rosalinda, oh my God, when you hear her next, you're not, it's just ethereal. It's just, you know, the progress. But that all we do is we help people use their instrument and their body the way it's designed to be used. That's all we do. We are not imposing a technique on you. We're helping you find your instrument. That's really what we do. And it takes two of us, as Peter was saying, to do that because this is only here. And there's a whole bunch underneath it. And as Peter said or alluded to, lack of support is the big thing. That's probably right, Peter, the number one thing that's missing. And so people don't really instruct. And most people, like clients I get, they have no idea where their core muscles are. They have
No.
no idea that their core muscles are not a rock of muscles, that they're an elastic
And
helper.
you need such deep muscles that they are hard to even have conscience about.
Well,
So,
that's the first thing I do when I teach people is they have to feel it working. And I'll say, put your hands here on me. And it may take, some people get it right away. Sometimes it takes a few lessons, but I can't go any further in my teaching until they felt it and they acknowledge it in their head. There are two parts of it. They have to feel it and acknowledge it, and that records the pattern. And then more and more, they don't have to think about it. But it's just so important. And that's what Peter and I figured out together. So enough
Well,
for me.
yeah, I was.
Go ahead.
When people hear that Karen say that people don't support enough, I want to make one thing clear. We're talking about flexible support, integrated alignment, so that the adjustments you need to make for different pitches, which are different strengths of vibration, are carried the way they need to be in the core muscles. Don't misunderstand that either of us want you to strengthen the core muscles and keep them tight and always the same. That is not singing. And if you train your core muscles in a way that you're getting tight and tighter and tighter, that's going to inhibit your singing. We're talking about a flexible body that where everything comes first from the brain, that gives the direction, and then from the coordination of the body at the core. Because it is only then that you can feel the difference in the core between a middle C and a high C. The difference, that's 2 octaves, which means that it's exponentially more vibration in the top, much more than twice. And therefore, it's going to feel differently here. For them to sound like they're part of the same voice, the middle C, the octave above, and the octave above that, needs you to understand that your core muscles need to be engaged as you sing all 3 of them, but they're engaged in a different way. And your body might need to be tilted, your spine further back for the high C, and your chin tucked, so that you take advantage of all that resonance, which is so different from this resonance. And I can go into that because that's also what people are unaware of on the whole. And it is such a simple concept to show. But the point is that your support has got to be flexible in order to make the music with your voice that you want to make and that you hear in your own head. And once you can do that and your body responds naturally, then you're an artist. You're not just a singer.
You know, the other thing, we aren't going to get into this too much because I can go on forever, is this
Why not?
sensory. Well, our approach is a sensory approach. And what Peter is saying is with our working together, the body gets back to working the way it's designed. So you're not pushing against yourself. So what happens is you imprint the information. Once the body and the mechanism, everything's connected, that's the way it's designed to work. And with coaching, it becomes unconscious because you reinforce these new patterns. The hardest part, I think, is unlearning habits of a lifetime, and at the same time, repatterning with things maybe you never thought of before. And I really have a lot of respect for anybody who takes this on because it's a lot. But that's really the key.
Well, you're talking about changing a pattern that may have come up in your earlier life, but may not be the best pattern for your adult singing.
Well, and people have 10 teachers before they get to us. I mean, just what Anna was saying. It's right. Like we kind of parse it out and we explain. A lot of people say, you know, put your shoulders back, but they don't tell you how to do it.
Right.
And what we do is we explain, this is where your core is. This is how you do it. Right?
Exactly. It's like a finishing school for singers.
Yes, exactly.
Now, one other thing I want to say along the lines of what you just mentioned is that I want to prove how natural opera singing is and how the body is set up to do it perfectly and smoothly and without great effort.
Right.
When you first come out of the womb, your mother's womb, you have perfect operatic technique. Wah! Your parents know exactly what you need and what that cry means. There is no disconnect between that sound and your body impulse. Your sound is coming from body. It's fully supported. Then you grow up and let's say you're now 2, 3, 4, 5, and you start walking around the neighborhood and you say, hey, Johnny, did you see Wendy over there? Oh, boy. And you're basically naturally using your full body and supporting your voice. You're like this. And you're so happy with it because you can feel it. And there's no difference between your body and your voice. None. And boy, is that a happy period. And then you're 5, 5.5, 6, or maybe you've gone to a school before. And there's no way a teacher can deal with a classroom of 30, let alone 10, children that are using their voices properly, connected to their body. So they say, shh, shh. And you learn how to disconnect your body from your voice. And some people learn how to disconnect it this way, and they find it up there. Other people find it down here, and they just drop it really down here. Other people just try to do it one way or another. But if you want to sing, you've got to reinstate that connection to your body, which is perfectly natural. And you've been socialized out of it.
That's interesting. Yeah, reinstate. Anyway, do you have more questions, Anna?
Well, we have more questions, but I think that with what we did today, we have enough material to have a full video about auditions and a full video about how you guys work, on what you focus on, what we discussed, because the conversation eventually and naturally evolved into that. So I think we have enough for 2 long videos and several short clips that are gold. Like, I think
great things.
That singers wonder about these kind of things in auditions. And it's something that also makes us very anxious. So I think this is going to be a hit.
Good.
But one thing that Rosalinda said, I asked her, because when I studied voice, I knew there was a voice in there and I knew I had the aptitude, but it was my person, who I was, who I am. I didn't have the right personality. When you see actors, you know, they get on a talk show, or singers, and the host says, oh, just sing. And they go, okay. And they sing. And they go, how do they do that? You know, they haven't warmed up. But there's a certain personality. And I wasn't going to stay around to try and figure that out. But I wanted so much to express myself. And I was so stuck. And I just couldn't figure it out. So I said, I'll have to find this another way. But I asked Rosalinda after she sang, I said, is this something you dreamed about, being able to sing like this? And she said, yes. And that's what it all comes down to for me, that as opera singers, all the work you do, oh my God, years and decades of work. But it comes down to, I say, free expression and revealing who you are. And that's a lot more than the sound of a voice. The voice is maybe that much, but to me, that's worth everything to give some. And that's where see how Peter's smiling. It is so wonderful to be able to direct. What we do is we direct people. We don't teach them. We direct them to find it within their own.
We guide them
hobby.
to find
and that
their
is
own
satisfaction. When that happens, like with Rosalinda, I mean, that my heart.
Yeah.
That's why we do
It's
this.
great. It's wonderful because
it's magic.
that spark of identity through your voice and the ability to express and have other people feel very deep emotions in these wonderful musical creations called opera. That is just like nothing else. And those people that work in this field really, basically, that's what they're after. Giving other people that experience, emotional experience, and themselves as a vessel to that. It's like no other. You know, I'm reminded we saw a film last night about surfing, like endless summer.
Endless summer.
The way that was met, it was in Lost LA. And surfing and catching the wave properly is like singing.
Exactly.
Your body reactions and balances and rebalances depending on how the wave is moving is exactly what the way your body has to support in a flexible and active way the air that is moving through you.
The wave is the air, yeah.
And you actually have more ability to shape that air than a surfer has to shape the wave. They can only deal with getting under the curl of a wave that's happening and reading it right. But as a singer, you're in control of the waves of air as well. So it's a fantastic thing to be in charge of. And it's most singers have worked so hard and they have already 90% of what they need to that complete freedom. And so these are really minor adjustments.
Everything's
And that's what we do, and we are so pleased that our backgrounds give us the ability to guide people into their own complete voice and expression.
And that's why we
really
don't
we
deal
do.
with beginning singers, because we have something that's much more applicable to people who already have a technique, whatever it is.
They need to have like a really solid technique and really
Right.
A good idea of how to handle their instrument in order to be able to make these sessions really so they can profit from them, right?
We're coaches. We think of ourselves as coaches, not teachers.
Right, and we're not replacements for your basic vocal teachers, because they got you to the place where you are, and undoubtedly what we are is a finishing school that will give you those final tweaks that will make everything that you've worked on a complete whole and uniquely you. That's really what this is about.
And you remember Tomas, like, I don't know, 6 months, a year ago? So different. You know, it's that little opening, like you've just experienced with, it's that's what we offer.
And you build on that.
Yeah. But it's
one little change you get, and then that stabilizes, and you can move to the next level with another small change. And
but it makes it available to the singer.
Yeah.
Because all we're directing you to find it within yourself.
Correct.
We're not superimposing anything on you. And that's sometimes the most difficult, because you have to feel, as Peter said, confident who you are. I mean, I think with Rosalinda, I think my sense of her, I don't know her, but she's not the most outgoing person. She has so much going on inside her and that beautiful voice. And it's just to me an example that she was able to find that opening within herself, which is is that kind of what you were thinking when you were singing the other day, Anna?
Yeah, actually, I think that it's such minor adjustments
Yes.
make such big difference.
Exactly.
It's
It
amazing.
opens up a much larger freedom for your expression, and you get to know yourself better, your body. We can't do the singing for you, and we don't feel what you can feel about that adjustment.
We're not
And
fixing you. We're not fixing you. You don't need to be fixed.
right.
It's so interesting to listen to all of this. And maybe we can save it for another time, but I was going to ask Peter if he actually got to meet Menotti.
Oh, yes, I hired Menotti. I met him as a kid, of course. I met him as a kid when I was 13 because his Amal and the Night Visitors is what I was at City Opera is what I was auditioning for, and I became the understudy.
Did you do any of the TV things?
Yeah. Well,
Is
this
there
was after
that?
the initial TV thing. They were going to do it again. Uh, and City Opera, the original TV thing had Chet Allen, and he was losing his voice, and that's why Menotti was auditioning, and my mother had me audition, and that's how
Mother.
my career in opera houses began at City Opera, covering Amal, with Shippers conducting, and the original mother was Rosemary Coleman, but they needed to put in Clara Mae Turner, very attractive Alabama glamorous mezzo who had a pet jaguar
Wow.
Did
that
she
she took
travel with?
photos with.
Did she travel with the Jaguar?
She took photos with and lived with the jaguar. I don't know. Everyone had a gimmick then, you know. In
Yeah,
any
you're
case,
re-
I did, and Shippers was the conductor. Did all the orchestra rehearsals with her, and that's how my career began in opera. They while I was there understudying, they put me in the children's chorus at City Opera, and the next season they weren't doing Amal, but Menotti was there for every performance. I mean, I
How
think
old
he
were
did.
you, Peter? How old were you at this
I
point?
was 12 or 13.
Oh my,
And then the next year, they didn't do Amal at City Opera. My mother trotted me off to the Met. That's when I joined the Met Children's Chorus and they called me back after the audition. It was a very interesting thing. They wouldn't tell me what it was about, but in the middle of a Carmen rehearsal with Pierre Montour conducting, they rolled the piano from the edge of the stage to the center, asked my mother. Risa Stevens and the Carmen cast was having a break. And in the old Met, my mother had to sit down and play the piano as I sang Don't Cry, Mother Dear from Amal and the Night Visitors. And as a result of that, I got to sing Feodor's in Boris Godunov. They broadcast the 70th anniversary of the Met from the Ed Sullivan Show on a Sunday night live from the old Met. There was Roberta Peters in the Rigoletto Quartet. There was Risa Stevens in something from Carmen. And Cesare Siepi sang the death scene of Boris, and I was his son. So that's that's how my career began.
And
It was
Peter,
quite
when you
exciting.
say these things, you're not just name dropping. Isn't it interesting, Anna? When you talk about things, it's not like you're trying to get celebrity names out there. It's just a record of your past. It's
Well,
so interesting.
I
let
bet the
me,
recording exists somewhere.
you know, oh yeah, I think it does because it went on television, and I did a lot of broadcasts. I had the solo line in Bohème, Voi la tromba il cavalier, and in Chenier, I was Madelon's grandson. So Sandra Warfield clutched me to her breasts to give me away in the French Revolution in Chenier in the third. Yeah, and I loved it.
I'll
Sandra
bet you
Warfield
do.
was married at that time to the tenor. What's his name? You'd know his name. He sang Radames all over, uh, and at the Met, and also then Siepi in the in the death scene of Boris, has this guilt growing up in him, and he clutches his son and tells him, "Don't trust the boyars; they're going to scheme against you," and this and that. And finally, he takes a giant fall from the top of the throne down to the floor. And I wasn't supposed to touch him until a certain musical cue. And then I sang I had one line to sing, which I sang. But I saw him start to fall, and I saw the wig start to come off his head.
Like a movie.
And he went down on the floor, and I wasn't supposed to touch him, and I saw the cameras were moving in to focus on his head, and he said to me, "Put me back on." And so I just gently tapped his head in a way to put the wig back on, and the cameras focused right on that. But at least I got it on.
Peter, don't you have a still photograph of one of your performances that you
I
can
have
send to her? Why don't
that
you
photo
send
right there.
that to her and me. I haven't.
I
can't
will.
remember.
I'll send it. I have that scene. What they did was, after having just decided they couldn't put Rosalind Elias, who sang Shepherd Boy before I did, but Metropolis insisted on having a boy soprano. But he also insisted on having a young boy sing Theodore, because they thought the cameras would pick up that it was a mature woman, up close. So I got that part. And this is a riot. I was going to Juilliard every Saturday to their prep school from Brooklyn, and my father would drive me. I would go to the orchestra and have my lessons, and he would sit in the lounge with the other parents of children that were in the prep school. The Saturday after the Sunday Ed Sullivan show, my mother, for the first time, decides she's going to go and sit in the lounge and, as we say in Yiddish, kvel, shine.
My son.
Yeah, my son, right. That's why she decided to go. But this is what happened. She went there. I went to my lessons, and she was there. And when I came back, I heard the story. She said she went there, and a woman there said to her immediately when she was introduced, "Oh, Mrs. Mark, I heard your son. I saw your son on television at the Ed Sullivan show on Sunday night." And my mother said, "Yes, yes." And she said, "And I was so disappointed."
Uh-oh.
Disappointed, my mother said. Well, she said, "Well, Mrs. Mark, he only had one line to sing." And my mother realized where she was coming from, and she said, "That's the way Mussorgsky wrote it, you idiot," basically. And to which this woman said, "Mrs. Mark, my son's in television. If they like the child, they rewrite the part." And my mother never came back to Juilliard, ever.
Anna, do you know how big the Ed Sullivan show was?
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember when the Beatles were on, I was at my friend Susie Stanley's house watching. I mean, everybody watched it. I mean, you didn't have much choice in those days, but he was
I
huge.
think it was Sunday night at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. We were allowed to stay up and watch it as kids.
And then The Wide World of Disney was the other one. Anyway.
And then there was Firestone with Renata Tebaldi. You came on. Yeah, Firestone out. Voice of Firestone.
I think that was before my time.
Could be. Yeah, I'm 10 years older.
I know.
So these were crazy times. I had a great time.
And I have a great time. I've heard these stories. I can't tell you how many times. When you come to New York and you sit in his living room, you will hear them again, and they never get boring.
I love that New York accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's New York. Yeah, well, of course, in Brooklyn accent, you have coffee. What do you like in your coffee?